in his office by name, and you just have no idea what it's about. Goddamn children in my house.
We're trying to talk about demons in hell. What's up, homies? Welcome to Manic Irony. This is the start of Spooky Week. Spooky.
Boo.
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 Okay.
Bro.
Well, today we're doing r/scared shit. Bro, r/scared shitless, and obviously
We got the best stories for you. The greatest.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
and I am Pablo.
Pablo Escobar.
Yep,
in the flesh,
that's
right here.
That's your man, your boy, your co-host Pablo.
Yep. All right. Why don't you start us off with the first story?
So tonight on Spooky Manic Irony, we got I ate the last slice of pizza and now I'm in hell. Part 1.
Bro, that means it's gonna end on a cliffhanger.
Hell yeah, it is. For next Halloween.
Yeah. Okay.
Everyone get cozy with a nice cup of scare.
That was kind of cringe.
You're cringe. Shut up. If somebody had told me at the beginning of all this madness that Old Nick was a nickname for the devil, I'd have never ordered food from Old Nick's Pizzeria. Or at the very least, I have read the fine print before I signed for the pizza. I'm not that lucky or that attentive, though. That's probably why I now find myself working in the court of Abudan, the Annihilator, during the height of his war with Decabria, the Decapitator. And before you ask, no, I don't really know what demons have against short, easily pronounceable names. I have been down here as long as some of the other folks I work with, but I have been here long enough to know to the score. Some people think of hell as a big lake of fire with 9 circles or levels or some shit like that, and I can tell you firsthand that's a load of bullshit. Hell is more like a city with 9 districts, and each district could easily be its own metropolis. Suffice to say, hell is fucking huge. It's like Beijing's bigger, filthier cousin with a prison record.
Bruh.
Each district has a lord. Each lord has a handful of dukes that work under him, and all of them ultimately answers to old Nicky himself, though he's not really that type to effectively lead, if you ask me. The smug bastard spends most of his time topside selling pizza. It only comes down here for the
Wait. That just hit me. What? Why?
If someone were to ask me what the provings were, the best explanation I could give is that they are basically Hell's version of the Super Bowl. What the fuck? What is this story?
Yeah, seriously.
Every 10 years or so, the lords of the district all rally their troops and sharpen their claws for a huge week-long televised slaughter fest in the devil's honor to prove that they still deserve their office. I honestly don't think the boss man gives a rat's ass who wins the provings. I think he just likes watching his cronies tear each other apart for his entertainment before he runs back to Earth for another decade while they pick up the pieces. The end result is a bunch of petty, bureaucratic dicks waving and fighting among the lords over who's in charge while daddy is out of the house. And the ones that get fucked over are the people like me. Another thing that people get wrong about hell is the torture. Don't get me wrong, it definitely happens, but it's not to punish us for being sinners or anything like that. It might have started out that way, back in the day, but nowadays it's just another way to keep us working. Most of us ain't even really bad people. I'm sure that hell started out as the last stop for the baddest of the bad, but ever since old Nicky got the bright idea to expand hell's workforce by making deals with people, the number of people that actually deserve to be here has plummeted. Though you could still see them around from time to time. They are not hard to spot. They don't all look the same, but they have the same cold, dead eyes. I avoid them whenever possible. Damn souls are down here are basically unpaid workers under the contract for all time. Demons like to call us the suckers. It's pretty much the worst way to spend eternity, and trust me, the few friends I've made down here never let me forget that I signed up for all this for a fucking deep dish pepperoni pizza. A fucking pizza, Larry. My friend Mark had laughed in total disbelief when I answered his question about what I was in for. As the saying went down here, I didn't read the fine print. I replied quietly as I kept my eyes on a filthy plate I was scrubbing. Me and Mark both worked the kitchen of Abudan's court, which was about as awful as you could imagine. Usually it was just the two of us and maybe a few minor demons on a good day, cooking and cleaning up after the hundreds of hungry hellspawn that filtered through the courts on a daily basis. I bet you feel stupid, he laughed. Not as stupid as you. At least I didn't sign just to fuck a chick I had a crush on in high school, I retorted. Leave her out of this, he said as his ears and cheeks turned as a bright shade of red while he pulled another load of dishes off the giant iron conveyor belt that brought dirty dishes back to the kitchen from the feasting halls. I'll drop it off, you will.
Wait.
I'll
drop it off, you will? Wait. What? I'll drop it of you will?
Yeah, okay, so I wasn't just...
Nah.
That's why I made that noise, because I'm like... my dyslexia is just
wait.
kicking in. I said as I placed a dish that was now passable as clean on the rack to my left and got ready to repeat the process for the 400th time that day. I was a machine on autopilot at that point, and I really didn't even notice the sound of my demonic manager stomping down the hall into the kitchen on those cloven hooves of his until he practically barreled through the door screaming, "Craft, Larry, craft!" He barked through clenched teeth, and he turned his pale, misshapen horned head from side to side, searching for me. I never seen him in particularly good mood, but he looked especially pissed for some reason. Now his eyes were glowing red, and I looked like they were about to pop out of his head. I turned around from where I stood at the sink, a few feet across from the door, just in time to see him stomping up to me in rage. I hadn't gotten to ask what was wrong before he started screaming obscenities at me. "You cock-sucking son of a bitch. You probably think you're some kind of big shot now, don't you? Who the fuck have you been kissing up to, huh?" he yelled. I had no idea what he was talking about. Huh? Don't play dumb with me, you insignificant little shit. I know damn well you'd have to have friends in high places pull these kind of strings. You think you're better than me. Say it to my face so I can smash your tiny skull into the concrete, he growled. "Look, Barry," I started to reply. "Bartholomew, you ignorant shit stain. I honestly have no idea what you're talking about." "Bullshit, you think I'm going to believe the abandoned himself would ask to see you, a mere human
Abaddon.
in his office by name, and you just have no idea what it's about? Goddamn children in my house."
We're trying to talk about demons in hell.
Come sneak in my room. Why I'm trying to talk about demons. Let's see, where did I stop off? So that's how you want to play it, huh? Yeah, Abaddon wants to see you in his office. He sent me to come and get you. Follow me and you better keep up. The court's a dangerous place and I won't be held responsible if something unfortunate were to happen to you on the way there, he said ominously before walking out the door without another word. I cast a backwards glance at Mark, who had a look of pure dumbfounded shock on his face before I bolted out the door after Barry into the dark corridor beyond. The labyrinth halls of Abudan's court were pretty standard as far as hell's architecture went. High ceilings supported by grand obsidian obelisks that still somehow managed to be narrow due to the close proximity of the walls. At certain points the halls got so narrow you had to squeeze past the obelisk that supported the ceiling to keep going, like somebody had built the place specifically to fuck with you. It didn't help that Barry was practically running down the hall like he was intentionally trying to lose me. I was wheezing like I had just run a marathon by the time we finally made it to the office of Abudan, the Annihilator. It was pretty unassuming at first glance. It looked like a big wooden door with a fresh red paint job and a brass knocker at its center. Directly above the knocker was a golden nameplate that read, Professor Abudan, Ph.D.
Why?
I didn't have a lot of time to wonder what a Lord of Hell could possibly have a Ph.D. in before Barry timidly knocked on the door, all his previous anger replaced by obvious fear, like a child afraid to interrupt a parent in the middle of an important meeting. We both stood there in utter silence for a moment before a deep, yet soothing voice called to us from the other side of the door. Come in. Barry went in first, and I followed him reluctantly. The inside of his office looked nothing like the rest of the court. A spacious fireplace stood off to the left, emitting a faint warmth. I felt carpet beneath my feet. In the center of the room was a polished desk that looked like it was made of mahogany, and behind that was a big, red recliner upon which sat a man who looked like he could have been a small Santa without the costume. He was a short and stocky, with a thick white beard and rosy cheeks. He wore what looked like an expensive suit and tie, and could have passed for a human if it's not for the jet black eyes. He seemed to be poring over paperwork when we came through the door. He regarded us with a warm smile when we came in, and gestured to us both to sit down on the wooden chair that were stationed in front of his desk. Welcome back, Barthotho. Is this the gentleman I requested? He asked in a jovial, friendly tone. Yes, my lord, Barry said quietly. He nodded, then turned to begin to speak to me directly. Mr. Kraft, I am very pleased you agreed to come see me on such short notice. I have no doubt you are busy, and I'm very grateful. Yeah, no problem, sir. I replied somewhat incredulously, since I had been busy doing slave labor mandated by Abudan himself. Oh, no need to be so formal, Mr. Kraft. I feel that business goes by easier when we're all comfortable, he said with a smile before pulling a mint out of a glass jar on the to his right. That's on the to his right.
Bro, that ain't sounding too bad in hell, bro. They got freaking mints.
Yeah. Would you like a mint? He offered. No, thank you. Suit yourself. Why am I here? I asked, sounding a bit more annoyed than meant
I don't think that's annoying. That's terrified.
A look of abject terror flashed across Barry's face in response to my rudeness, but Abudan himself just chuckled before he got down to business. Do you like your current state of employment, Mr. Kraft? What do you mean? Your job, do you like it? There isn't much to like about it, I said plainly. I thought not. What if I could offer you a better job? A better one? The best one. What if I've offered you the best job in my power to give? What if I made you a Duke of Hell? He asked.
Duke.
Barry nearly fell out of his seat in shock in response to this statement. It was a joke. I sure couldn't tell and wasn't quite sure how to respond. After a few moments of silence, Abaddon spoke up again. Well, what do you say? He asked with an unreadable expression on his face. I'd like to know what's in it for you, I asked. Ah, smart man. I'll answer with a question. And bear with me, I promise it all makes sense in the end. Do you know how one remains a Lord of Hell for as long as I have? He asked with serenity. By killing everybody else.
Sincerity, not serenity.
Shut the fuck up. By killing everybody else that wanted the job. That made him laugh aloud. Yes and no. The strength to destroy one's enemy is a prerequisite to becoming a lord, but in order to keep the position, you need more than strength. You need a nose for opportunity, and I smell opportunity on you, Mr. Kraft. How so? Earlier this morning, this letter addressed to you came across my desk, and despite my vast powers, I'm unable to open it. He then reached into the drawer and pulled out a pristine white envelope with a red wax seal affixed on front of it, which he then handed to me with a smile. If you would read it to me and then follow my instructions to the letter afterwards, You have my word that your stay in hell will be far more pleasant than you experienced thus far, Mr. Crab. I took that letter and inspected it more closely, only to find myself even more confused than ever. Upon the letter was the official seal of the place of Satan, and on that letter was the simple phrase, "To Larry from Old Nick."
Wow. There was no substance to that. Okay, it wasn't bad. It was bad.
Pizza.
No, it wasn't bad.
I'm not scared shitless at all.
No, I have a feeling that mine is gonna be a little like more serious, just because it's just called crocodiles. All right, well I'm gonna start reading. All right, let's get ready to get spook.
Spook time.
Spook. All right. I gotta get the phlegm out of my.
Gotta get the reading voice in, the deep reading voice, so you can say Abaddon the Annihilator.
Crocodiles. Roderick Vargman was an odd man, to say the least. He wasn't harmful or anything. At least I'd like to hope so. I liked Roddy, regardless of what anyone else thinks of him. Again, he was a very weird man. He cut most of his ties with friends and relatives once he left for college. As far as I know, he didn't bother making any friends throughout his adult life. Those he did befriend were coincidental and usually consisted of people who had similar interests to his, like myself. Roddy was a recluse. He'd stick to staying in his apartment and doing his thing from home. Reading this, it's easy to assume he was some bloated, neck-bearded, redneck, antisocial clown who blamed the world for his problems. However, that's not the case. His problems mostly consisted of him being overweight and avoidant. It's hard to even call him a
Misanthropist.
No, it's misanthrope. It's not that he hated people. He just never liked human company. Other than that, he was the average Joe, physically speaking. Mentally, not so much. The guy was an artistic genius, according to some people. That's how he made a living. Various artistic commissions and payments he was owed for letting others use his creations. While creating art was his job and a thing he was fairly decent at, his true passion was the critique. He loved fiction, but his standard for what should be considered a good piece of fiction was impossibly high. He criticized and riffed on everything he could get his hands on it, regardless of the genre. To be totally honest, he used to write some too, but his work was largely not great. He knew how to build up a plot really well up to the climax, but then he'd pull an unrelated or unsatisfying twist and kill the suspense with no reward. People called him out on that, but he, in his usual spirit, remained dismissive and opted to excuse his lackluster writing as something he just does for the fun of it. I met him online after he had given me one of his rare positive reviews on one of my stories. We've chatted for a while and ended up realizing we're neighbors. That's how my friendship with Roddy Vargman
Wow, what a
began.
coincidence.
He'd constantly tell me about how this piece of internet fiction or other was absolute garbage. Most of the time, he was just overreacting. Like most things in life, most amateur fiction is average, my own included, I'd say, but Roddy thought most of it was equivalent to nuclear waste. For that attitude, Roddy got himself a fair share of haters. Most people would dismiss Roddy as the asshole he was, while others loathed him to the point of throwing a fit whenever they'd see his internet alias, Demon Canine. Because he probably played some Xbox 360 back in the day.
XXX69 Demon Canine XX.
Someone even tried doxing him once, but ended up getting the wrong information and probably ended up exposing some poor innocent soul. Roddy found that amusing. I remember telling it wasn't funny, and he said that he was laughing at what he called the losers who would attempt to hurt a guy over a few words online regarding their shitty fanfics. That's how this man has always operated. In some senses, he saw himself as superior to everyone else. He didn't carry himself like he was the best at everything. He just looked down at people most times and made excuses for his behavior. The guy was truly an awful individual at points. He helped expose some guy who was embroiled in a feud of sorts with him as a financial scammer, which was good. He made it seem like it was all about helping the victims get justice. However, he declined on doing the same when it came to any other piece of shit out there. that was mentioned to him, he'd say, "Oh, I don't know this person," and switch the topic to avoid having to deal with that. I'm not here to speak ill of the person, though. Roddy Varg was actually a respected member of the neighborhood, by all accounts. He was surprisingly pleasant to people in person when he was forced to interact with others. We used to hang out about every other week, but these hangouts turned less and less frequent in the months leading up to his demise. I remember one day we scheduled to meet at the bar for a couple of drinks. I showed up before Roddy and waited for him. When he showed up, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. He was all pale and covered in sweat. His breath was erratic and seemed blown up. I remember jumping up from my seat to ask him what was up, and he said he was okay, professing he'd been having a little trouble with anxiety and plagued by bad sleep. That evening, he was unusually docile and quiet. I had to force the conversation to keep going because he wasn't entirely there. I remember asking him a few times if he was sure he was all right, and he'd snap at me with an increasing anger that he was actually alright, so I let him be. After that evening, our interactions became less and less frequent. His behavior towards me and online became more and more erratic. We'd start a normal conversation, and suddenly he would either go silent or stop replying to my messages, only to come back later stressing how he's sorry and that he wasn't feeling well. His critique and ridicule of amateur authors had become harsher as time went by. Even things he deemed acceptable before had turned into rants and verbal filth in his eyes. From insulting people's works, he started dishing personal attacks towards anyone who dared ignite his ire. While he remained fairly friendly to me and his other friends, being associated with him came to be somewhat unpleasant. People knew I was friends with the guy and would pester me to cut him off before he'd hurt me too. I stuck with him. Something about his slow progression into oblivion was fascinating and terrifying. One day he told me out of the blue about a dream he had. In his dream, Roddy found himself tied to a blood-stained table, naked and gagged. Kinky! He said he tried wriggling out and screaming for help, but couldn't. According to him, the room was dark and dimly lit by a single light bulb emitting a faint red light. The door in front of him flung open. A massive creature stepped forward. It was a massive crocodilian mountain of a man that marched towards him, sending waves of anxiety through his body. The beast ended up shoving its clawed hand into his chest, breaking through his skin, muscles, and rib cage before grabbing his heart and crushing it in his hand before pulling it out and devouring the bloodied organ. Roddy said he woke up feeling like his chest had been caved in. He had mentioned not being able to force himself to get up for a few moments before he finally managed to sit up. A sharp pain coursed through his rib cage. He concluded his story by saying he woke up with a bit of blood smeared on his lips. I told him to see a doctor, but he refused to listen, assuming he was just being anxious and biting his lip during his sleep. I tried talking some sense into him, but he wouldn't listen. It all went downhill from there. His critiques became more frequent and more violent. Outright violent, insulting and verbally battering any flaw he could find in a piece of fiction. He also turned more anxious, it appears, because he deleted most of his social media accounts. I kept seeing his alias pop up in forums and forums and sites I frequent at an alarming rate. A few long posts a day. He was probably skipping work to write his reviews. I've decided to not bother with the guy anymore. He had some serious health condition and ignored my advice. Why should I bother with making sure he keeps his income steady? Wasn't my problem. After a month of silence, he video called me, shaking and visibly confused. His room was dark and completely silent. He looked at me through the camera lens and whispered, "Can you see it?" I was confused. "Huh? Dude, are you alright? Can you see it?" He motioned to the left with his eyes. "I can't see anything other than your wasted mug. Are you high on something?" I responded. The fucking crocodile's here," he whispered, nervously looking to the left without moving his head. "You need help, man. There are no crocodiles in there. You're alone. I'm going to come over and we'll have a chat about your health, buddy." I told him, No. He mumbled before turning off the video chat. He did look heavier than the last time I'd seen him, and he's turning into crocodile, man. And he was being paranoid about some crocodile. He was definitely losing his mind. The guy needed help, and I have to give it to him. Even if he'd hate to admit it, he needed medical attention, both mental and physical. Without thinking too hard, I grabbed my coat and made my way towards Roddy's apartment. It was the third apartment complex away from mine, virtually a 2-minute walk at a snail's pace. I got to his place and found his mailbox filled with bills. He wasn't the kind of person to skip on not checking his mail. He was too meticulous for that. I climbed up the stairs and knocked on the door. There was no reply. I knocked again. Still nothing. Worried, I started banging on his door, but the only response I've gotten was an eerie silence. One of the neighbors came out asking me what all the commotion was about. I told him about the video call and Roddy's overall situation. The neighbor said it was weird because nobody had seen or heard anything coming out of Roddy's apartment in weeks, not even the occasional blaring of music they had gotten so used to. I yelled out, shit, thinking something might have happened to the guy. I pushed the handle as hard as I could, and the door opened slightly with a chilling creak. Son of a beat! I hissed. I hissed before kicking the door open and screaming out Roddy's name as the neighbor followed behind me. The smell of cat feces hit my nostrils. Specifically cat feces. How do you discern?
It's pungent.
No, that's pee.
No, I don't know. Cat smell.
As I stepped foot into the apartment, Roddy, why don't you clean the litter box, you sick bastard? I yelled out as I was walking through the house. His apartment was neat and orderly, but a bit of dust had collected on some of his furniture. The closer I got to his study, the worse the smell of rotten eggs became. My heart sank to my heels when I finally found him in his study. The smell was unbearable inside the room, but the sight was far worse. Found Roderick slumped over his desktop, which was still running. His skin was pale green, blue, and green, and his body was beyond bloated, and some parts of him were outright starting to decay. His Savannah cat, Edna, was trying to tear a chunk of meat from his arm. His neighbors ran out of the room screaming profanities at the sight of Roddy's corpse while I screamed at him to call 911. I held back the urge to throw up and pushed onward, swatting at the renegade feline. After scaring the cat away, I've noticed most of his face was gone. Facial muscles and bits of skull were exposed. The urge to throw up returned, and I looked away. Facing his screen, I noticed he was writing a review, one of his critiques, something about a story involving a demonic entity inspired by the Egyptian crocodile-headed god Sobek. The review was all over the place in terms of pacing, point progression, and language. It wasn't really bad either. He tried to make it as scathing as he could, but I guess he had no typical Roddy spice left within him. The one thing I noticed was the closing line, "Why won't your stupid crocodile leave me alone?" It seemed like Roddy had lost his mind before he passed. I was caught up in thought for a moment, wondering how long it must have been since he'd passed for Edna to start eating him. That's when something hit me. Something ignited a fire in my mind, and I couldn't stop thinking about it for quite some time. As it turned out, Roddy suffered a heart attack and died as a result of that. He was found to have suffered from hypertension and the early stages of diabetes. He died some 2 weeks before I showed up. I threw out the webcam just in case, because I still don't know how on earth did Roddy video call me that day. He was supposed to be dead. Huh. It was okay.
So there was no crocodile in the end.
I guess.
I'm very disappointed.
I guess there wasn't. Guess that's just how it be.
God damn, Roddy.
Alright, well, this is a slower video than normal, but we're gonna be posting.
'Cause it's spooky.
Yeah, but we're gonna be posting, hopefully, a video every day for a week. So,
hopefully we are. Hopefully. We're winners.
Alright. So look forward to tomorrow, because there's gonna be another video coming out. And also be sure to follow us on Twitter at Irony Manic to get updates on everything, and be sure to subscribe to this channel and leave a like, homie. You better hit that like.
Or not, or the spooky man's gonna get you if you don't hit that like. He's gonna come and he's gonna
Abaddon's gonna get you. Yeah, Abaddon's gonna be like, bruh. You'll be like, bruh.
Abaddon the Annihilator. Don't eat that goddamn pizza.
Alright, well, see ya, guys. Hi, homies, my homies, my
Bye.
guys. Bye.